So I'll proceed. So it's always good to always, focus on one thing, master it. And then when you are good enough at that thing, you can now, okay, you know what, you want to focus on another thing or learn another thing. So I'm not against, learning multiple languages, but, it is always just good to focus and owning on one thing at a time, right? And like I said, within the landscape of backend, right, there are people who just write reactive programming, right? What that means is that, well, I'm sure you guys will figure it, you guys, as I'm saying the words, you can be Googling them to, or you can drop questions in the chat so that at least if you can then take the questions at the end. But there are people who write, reactive programming and are backend developers. If you now want to go into an organization that's essentially what they do, right? You would have to learn those techniques, right? And there are some people there are some also companies that only use like NoSQL databases, right? If you want to go into those organizations, you have to learn. But some people just use, so even between MySQL and SQL and Postgres, for example, yes, they are both databases, right? But they have like nuances. So if you want to be a backend developer that's going to work on either of those technologies, you have to be able to learn, for SQL, for MySQL, right? What are the nuances, whether it's InnoDB or MySam, right? For Postgres, right? So those are like two engines that MySQL has. For Postgres as well, right? There are also nuances, right? So there are little things, right? That each of those technologies have that for you to be good at them, you have to, learn about them essentially, right? So again, the idea is focus on one thing, incrementally learn about it, and then as you are, going day by day, you get to the point whereby, you've essentially mastered that thing, and then you are good at those things, and then at that point again, you are not, afraid or even scared, of, sharing your knowledge or talking to anybody about what it is, right? So like I said, just a summary of, what I said earlier, to master whatever one thing you are working on, prioritize it. So essentially, it's not that time where you're supposed to be learning that you want to be on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, or Twitter, bantering. You have to focus on it. Yeah. Any questions? Hello? I think somebody's speaking. Okay, yeah, so okay, we have one question. Okay. All right. So we'll get to it at the end. I've seen the question. So which programming language should we focus on? We'll get to it at the end. So to master whatever one thing you are working at the moment, like I said, prioritize it, start small, be consistent. So what it means is if it's going to take you, so for example, I'm usually not afraid to spend 2 years learning something, right? So you don't have to, so a lot of times today, we want instant gratification. I'm learning this thing today. I must be good at it by tomorrow. No. One of the things, and that's why I recommended those two books. One of the things I learned about that mastery book, and I also tied it to Bruce Lee because again, that book is about someone that person is like a martial artist, right? The person that wrote that book. But again, it's the idea. You keep practicing at something, practicing at something. It might take you a year, it might take you 2 years, but over that point in time, once you know it very well within that 2 years, you'll be better than someone that just learned it just to be good enough, right? And like I said, ignore distractions. It's not when you're supposed to be learning that you want to be doing TikTok. So again, I don't have TikTok, but I have Instagram and I have YouTube, right? So I know when to spend like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes to, take a downtime, relax, and, maybe watch some videos on YouTube or just, check some banter on Instagram, right? So yes, you need to do all those things, but again, you have to then, be able to do it at the right time, essentially. Yeah, so like I said, specialization. So this is just some of the things that, so even me as a Java backend engineer and someone that is an engineering manager, I can tell you that all these technologies I've put here, technologies related to someone that is a backend engineer for Java, right? And I can tell you that I only know about half of the technologies are here, right? I don't use struts, I don't use Micronauts, I don't use Quarkus, I don't use Play, I don't use Elidon, I don't use Grails, I don't use, well, I know Gradle, but I don't essentially use it, right? So a lot of all the technologies here are things that I'm supposed to know as someone that is even engineering manager for Java, but it's impossible for me to know it because, again, so let's take Spring and Play and Quarkus and Struts and Helidon. They are all frameworks for building applications in Java. It is impossible for me to say that I want to know all of them, right? So the one that I used to do in the organization I work with is Spring. But is it going to be easy for me to know Quarkus or Helidon or Micronauts? It's going to be easy because everything is written in Java and I know Java well enough. So once you know the technology well enough, whatever framework that you need to pick up would be easy, right? And over time, you also get to learn about those frameworks. So one thing that I usually recommend and to people is don't be someone that is just learning frameworks. Learn the technologies that those frameworks are developed under. So for example, I do Ruby on Rails, but I know Ruby, right? I've done Django in the past. I know Python, right? So once you know the programming languages that all of these things are built on, whatever framework, because all those frameworks are just, libraries that are built on top of that language, right? So once you know those languages, it's easy for you. So for example, I've even dabbled in Android development, right? Just because of, obviously, I was able to do that because I knew Java. So again, some of these things, like I said, there's a lot of things that even what I've listed here is not even up to 10% of the technologies that you need to know to be a backend developer. I got tired of typing, was why I just left it like this, right? While I was working on the slide. So it's impossible to say that you want to know everything that is there. It is so impossible, right? So like I said, take one thing, focus on that one thing. You don't have to try to know everything, right? Let's just take one thing, know that one thing, and then after a while. So if I want to, for example, go to an organization and then that organization says, oh, there isn't Micronauts or there isn't Helidon, it won't be a problem for me to, within the space of 3 months, learn how that framework works because I know the underlying technology, which is Java, right? So it's always good, like I said, it's always good to, pick that programming language, be good at it, understand how that programming language works well enough. So what is the difference between how, for example, so if, for example, you come to my interview and I ask you, oh, how does the instance of operator works prior to Java, I think it was 15 or 16, right? There was a difference in how, even though it's Java, there was a difference in the way that functionality in previous versions of Java worked as compared to now. So you cannot just even say that, oh, I knew Java when it was Java 8. There's Java 21. I don't even know the next one. So there's been a whole plethora of Java versions that have been released, and each of them come with new advancements. So you always, have to. So if you pick one and specializing on it, you always have to keep improving and growing in your knowledge on it. So to wrap up, so like I said, I was going to keep this under 40 minutes, and I know it's almost 40 minutes mark. So I'll just quickly try and wrap up and then we'll take questions. I think we have like 1 or 2 questions. So to become a master, 2 things I would, just suggest is, you need to embrace daily learning, right? So it has to be one thing that you do every day. So I'm sure, like I said, people that have worked with me know that if I get to the office every day, I spend at least 30 minutes, 1 hour studying. And the reason why I do that is because of the fact that I know that, as I'm waking up every day, things are changing every day and I need to be kept abreast of it. So that's why I said that if you don't have a convincing reason why you want to do something, right, it is impossible for you to it's impossible for you to be great at it because, you cannot say you want to be learning every day if it's not something that you want to wake up every day and want to be doing, right? Because trust me, things are changing. So as people are learning new things, as people are also working in the organization and figuring out new things, they are improving on this technology that we are using, right? Because a lot of us are users of this technology. So you can't just say, I already know Java 8, and that's where I'm staying. Trust me, you're already very old-fashioned. Yes, so you get a job with the knowledge, but yes, you sure would. But again, you cannot progress to be a master. And then, like I said, have a good mindset and never give up. So just to wrap it up, what are the key takeaways for us? Choose that one thing. And at each point in time, always focus on just that one thing at a point in time. And then once you are good at it, learn deeply about it. So once you learn deeply about it, sell yourself. So how do you sell yourself, right? If you get into an organization, so let's say today you are employed into an organization, you need to sell yourself. How do you sell yourself? You are given a task, you are given something to do, right? You need to show convincingly that, what, this thing that I've been given, I know it well enough. That's how you sell yourself. You need to, engage in whether it's conferences or talks. So for example, I contribute to open source, right? I've contributed to some Microsoft repositories in the past, but because I no longer work on those things actively, right? Today, I'm working on contributing to one of the frameworks that we use within the organization that I use now within the Java ecospace, right? So I'm learning about that framework, playing with it so that I'm able to also contribute, whether it's just maybe documentation or even raising issues or bugs, right? Those are ways that you contribute, and then people get to know you and they know your capability, right? So that's how you sell yourself. And I'm sure you have seen a plethora of examples of people out there that in the Nigerian tech space that have been able to sell themselves because of what they've been able to do. So examples, there are a lot of examples. So do work that gets you excited. So for me, this is very, 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 very key. Doing work that gets you excited. If you're not excited about something, it's impossible to be good at it or even be interested in seeing that into completion. And like I said, you don't want to just be what's it called? Be a good enough developer, right? If you want to be great at something, you have to be able to do things that excite you. And then share your knowledge, whether it's, giving a talk like this, mentoring somebody. So I have like two people that I mentor, that, one is still in uni, the other is already working, right? So I have one or two people that I mentor, aside even people that I work with on a regular basis. So have people that you mentor. And then one of the key things that, I've learned recently is to say no a lot. So if it's not something that excites you, say no to it, right? So today, if, I'll give an example of myself, but if I'm working, if there's a task I need to work on, right? Or there's something that we need to do in the organization and it's not something that I'm excited about, right? A lot of times I usually just find my way to wiggle around out of those things, right? Now, because I'm at a senior level, you can see it's a bit easier for me. It can be a bit easier and not so easy because again, if my CTO says I need to do something, it's hard for me to wiggle out of it. The only way I can wiggle out of it is to assign that thing to somebody else and then I move on with my life, right? So those are ways I can wiggle out of it. Or, so, and a real life example that something that happened to me. So a few years back, I was working in an organization that we had to do like a blockchain integration for our customers, right? It was not a customer request. It was just, one of the PMs. So blockchain just came out then, I think probably like 2019. Oh, let's try to do blockchain, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, a lot of our customers are old people. Why would we want to be doing blockchain for people that might not even care about that technology, right? But again, the PM wanted to just sell that idea and then, okay. So, that task got assigned. Luckily for me, I was able to talk to my manager then that, you know what, we have a plethora of things that we're also supposed to do. Can we just spend a minimum amount of time? Because I knew that if that was the sole thing I was doing, I was not going to be excited about the work. And then, I was going to be frustrated essentially. So I was like, you know what, can we just, spend like a few, maybe 1 or 2 days per sprint to focus on that thing rather than spending, the entire 10 days within the sprint. So I only spent about 2 days every week. 2 days every 14 days, right, to work on it. So those 2 days, yes, they were not days that I enjoyed, but I was like, at least I did other work that I enjoyed, right? So sometimes I'll just quickly even do the work within the period of 1 day and ship it out and go and focus on things that got me excited, right? So those are one of the ways in which, I was able to. So yes, I could not essentially say no to it, but again, I still found a way to say no by, not work, taking that as like a primary task that I needed to work on. So it's always good to say no because again, that way, if you're doing something that does not excite you, you will just, be very frustrated with whatever it is you're doing. And like I said, always refresh your learning. I think I gave an example before. there are so many changes that have been happening in various programming languages. So even, I think one of the tutors even mentioned about the difference in the way Python was in Python 2 and Python, I think whatever, maybe it's 3.18 or something that we are in now. The last time I used Python was maybe Python. That I used it to do like production was with maybe Python. I had to write some scripts and it was maybe Python 3.12. There were no types then, but I know Python now has adopted the concept of typing and things like that a lot, right? So if I just knew maybe Python 2.7 that I learned like maybe 8 or 7 years ago, and I've stuck on that knowledge, I'm not going to be able to, do scripting that I needed to do, for some work like 3 years ago. So some of those things, right? Even though I'm not actively using Python, I always also, just learn and keep abreast as to what is changing in this world, in the world of this technology, right? Okay, these are the things that have changed, right? Even if it's just passively, such that, that way, um, I'm sure that, if the opportunity comes to say, you know what, I want to move to a career that, is Python specific, I know I have the necessary skills and what it takes, to be a Python developer. It will just be for me to brush up my learning. So, yeah, so I think that is it. Thank you. So I know someone asked a question, but before we take that, yeah. Yeah, so thank you very much for your time. I know there's some feedback I'm supposed to share with everybody. So I'll just do that before we take questions, right? Yeah, so so just announcements before I open the floor up and answer the question that was asked. So for I know a lot of the sessions are ending today, and there'll be another cohort, I think sometimes in maybe April or thereabout, right? So some of the things I think that would be good to focus on is, applying for jobs and internships. So I'm sure in the groups, a lot of I think there are even some internships that information that has been shared. So more would be shared. So always look out for those. Then also, as you are learning a lot of some of these programming languages, it will also be good to, practice interview preparation essentially, right? So I'm sure the organizers, have also been dropping ideas and sharing things. So it's always good to always, practice some of those things. Yes, you might not necessarily need them, but even myself, right? There's a tool I use, right? It's called Grind75. That tool essentially just, has collated the top 75 questions that whether you want to work on Google, Microsoft, or whatever, like the common questions that they ask, and then that tool has collated it, so you can search for it, Grind75, right? So it's always good to use some of those tools, or even if it's just crash the I can't remember the name of the book. What is it? CTIC, crashing the coding interview, right? CTCI, right? So even if it's just that, read it, learn some things from it. So again, you don't have to, so if, for example, you are reading a book, so I love to read books, right? If I'm reading a book, I don't have to read the book start to finish, right? I'll just read like maybe few portions of the book. I gain what I need to gain, and then I've held it, right? And then always network, right? One of the key things with networking, whether it's via, LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub, whatever, right, is that it helps you position yourself. So, like I said, I do like open source contribution, right? The only reason why I do that is just, to be out there, right? So I've had, I then have people reach out to me to say, oh, what are you doing? Are you interested in working on this? Whether it's even like free work, right? The essence of you doing that free work is you can still put it as in your CV that you've done work. So for example, someone that does not have work today, if you are, very active on a channel whereby, maybe an open source project, right? And someone reaches out to you say, oh, there's work we can do. Can you do that work like for free? yes, you might not gain anything financially, but the benefit of it is that you might not see someone that says that. You can even add it to your CV, right? And before you know it, people will be like, you have someone that can recommend it to say, oh, I've worked with this guy, he's a good developer, right? So some of those things are um, important. And then lastly, what do I do on a day-to-day? Like I said, I'm an engineering manager, but prior to that, I was a senior backend developer. So what I do on a day-to-day, so just sharing some general tips. So what I do on a day-to-day is, well, it depends. So as a manager, I, work with like the project managers, product team, to help, plan sprints. So essentially sprints are, how essentially we break work into chunks. So, um, what can I say for an example? So let's say we are building a feature that is supposed to take payments from Paystack or the likes, right? A common example, right? We will plan that feature into a sprint. So we might say, oh, developer A will be the person to work on it. What does developer A need to do to work on it? Okay, he needs Paystack details. He needs to work with this front end or designer to do that. So all of that is what I then do as like an engineering manager. But that's if I'm wearing the hat of an engineering manager. So I also wear the hat of like a developer. So it might be that, oh, support have escalated an issue to say, there's a bug that we need to fix, right? So in doing that, I'll then go and check the logs to see, oh, this issue that they are complaining about, what happened? So I try to use the logs to like give me like an historical view of what happened and then get details about that customer, maybe check the database if I have access to the database, or check some platforms to see the information about that database. And then I use that to try to walk back to try to understand what the issue happened. Because a lot of times when issues are happening in production, you might not be able to replicate it. The best you can do is sort of like guesstimate, guess and do an estimation. So guesstimate to say, this thing that is happening, right? I think this is why this thing is happening. You know what? Okay, based on this why that I've been able to guess and estimate, can I do ABC to replicate it? And then you might not be able to replicate it now in your local or development environment, and then now use that um, to resolve the issue essentially. So those are some of the things I just do, like either as like a engineer or um, whether it's as a backend developer or an engineering manager. So those are like the two hats. Um, and then lastly, I know there will be some some giveaways. So I recommend that everyone within that is actively in this group now just pays attention to the community channels on WhatsApp, and then you get those details as well. So just to take the question before we round up. So someone asked, for programming languages to learn as newbie, some suggest JavaScript or Node.js, some other Python, while others say Java. So for me, right, like I think I mentioned earlier, I would suggest you start with something like Python. Um, but don't just do it independently, right? I would suggest, if it's possible for you, register for a course like ALX, or even if it's Coursera, take a course whereby, it has been curated. The importance of that is that you would have activities to do, you have examples to do, you have things to do that would mentally task you, and in so doing, you'd get good at it. So I know, for example, ALX, depending on the subscription you do, some of them would say, oh, you have capstone projects. And as a side note, right, I know the organizers of this program are also planning to do like a paid tutorship whereby it will just be, like more of one-on-one sessions. And then during those sessions, you then, be taken through, be given like sort of like a syllabus that, you can then follow, and then give you like, also assignments and tasks and, capstone projects, right? So if you're interested in that as well, I'm sure you can reach out to one of the community managers, and then they can advise on how to go about um, doing that, right? Yeah. So I hope I was able to answer your question, Mayoko. Hello? Sure.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Yeah, so I think that is it. Thank you everyone for joining the conversations. So please stay active on the channel, as you're learning, and then if you have any questions, I'm also on the WhatsApp channel. Obviously, because of work, I might not be as responsive, or but if there are any questions, whatever it is you need support on, you can always ask your questions or feedback, or even as you're learning, you need someone to guide you. You can always drop a chat on those channels, and then the community managers would advise, and then we can always take it from there. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.